Good morning. The most precious gift. As we introduced last week and for the weeks of Advent, we're focusing on that most precious gift that every one of us here have received, the gift of faith. That gift of faith that is the difference maker in your life. That gift of faith that all of us cherish so much. That most precious gift. And so we have decided here that what we wanted to do for these 4 weeks was to focus on Matthew Kelly's book, The 4 Signs of a Dynamic Catholic. And 4 Signs, 4 weeks of Advent made it very easy. So we're presenting that work to you little by little. Last week, if you recall, it was about prayer. And if you have the copy of the book and you've been reading along, you could see how he basically develops that by saying, all Catholics pray, but a dynamic Catholic, one who is very entrenched in the faith and very much active in their faith, has more than just a simple prayer life. They have a regular prayer life, a routine of prayer within their routine. So every day at about the same time, doing the same kinds of prayers, attending Mass, saying rosaries, reading the Bible, doing different things. And he says, and even if you're not there, you don't have to do it all at once. Maybe just pick one thing that you'd like to add to your prayer life and then try to do it each day. Just spend a few minutes with Scripture or what have you. Now that we're moving along, I was thinking the other day of a conversation I had several years back with someone. I had talked about and preached about certain issues that I was asking people to address in their lives. And I was just saying that these are things that we have to start to get stronger in our faith about. And as I was presenting them, I thought, I was being pretty convincing, but maybe a little bit strong in my words. And sure enough, there was a parishioner who reacted. And at the doors of the church, he came at me saying, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. This stuff that you're talking about, there's, like when it comes to things like abortion, there's always, you can't say that everybody has to do that. No, I think we can. As Catholics, we can. And as I listened to him for a little while, he was doing a very good job of giving me a secular argument. He was doing a wonderful job, as a matter of fact, of giving a secular argument. And the more I listened to him, the more I began to realize that his problem wasn't that, he believed all of this stuff, he just didn't know any better. And so I finally asked him, can you do me a favor? Can you tell me what the church says? Can you give me the argument that I'm trying to make? Because, if you need a relativist argument, I can give it with the best of them. I used to be a master at it. I understand how the whole thing works. That virtue of tolerance, just let everything happen all along. Just so long as you don't do it, it's okay. And so he stood there dumbfounded for a minute because he didn't know what to say. And so I said, here, listen, here's what I'd like you to do. I'm going to give you a little project. There's a great series on Formed that I want you to go watch. And if you have to watch it 2 times or 3 times or 4 times, do that. Don't rush through it. It's called Who Am I to Judge by Dr. Edward Shree. I've mentioned it before. It's a great series, and it's available to all of you on Formed. The second quality, if you will, of a dynamic Catholic that Matthew Kelly gives us, if you're looking at the book, is to study. Study. Now, when he says that, he doesn't mean that I want you all to go matriculate in some master's program in theology someplace and, earn that advanced degree and do all of that. I know it sounds like that. When I say the word study, it's like, oh, I've got to go get myself a teacher and I'm going to sit in a classroom again and I'm going to have to take tests and do all of that. He doesn't mean any of that, thanks be to God, because I've been through it a few times in my life, and I'd much rather do it the way I'm doing it now. And that is basically what we asked you to do last week. Get a work like his book, and just read a little bit of it each day. Something that simple. Maybe subscribe to a podcast that you can listen to on the way to and from wherever you work or whatever you're doing. Maybe just take some of these books that we have and read them, or look for articles online that you can read. And he says maybe just a couple of pages a day. He's not talking about a lot. He's making it very palatable. See, this week, too, we're hearing John the Baptist, and I love it when John the Baptist shows up in the Scriptures, because John the Baptist is that kind of interesting character, that figure that's out in the desert. And people are going out, and they're being attracted to him for whatever reason. Maybe because he was finally speaking with conviction, maybe because his words were piercing. Who knows what it was? But how many of you would jump in your car and drive out into the desert, into a deserted place of nowhere, to listen to a preacher? These are people that I say their hearts wanted to know more. I have yet to meet a Catholic who has said, oh, I don't want to know anything about the faith. I really don't care I don't care what the church, I don't care about the Bible, I don't care about that. I haven't met Catholics like that, but I have met Catholics who do nothing to nourish that. I've met a lot of Catholics who have done nothing to nourish their faith, to embellish their faith a little bit. You know, it's interesting, whenever I get into conversations with evangelicals know their Bible quotes. Boom, boom, boom. They'll just keep throwing them at you. And every time I get into a conversation with them, I begin to realize after a while that this is just becoming like a Bible bingo discussion. We're just throwing biblical quotes back and forth at each other and never actually getting into the meat and potatoes and the principles. I'm sure many of you have friends who are evangelicals who always just go back to the same handful of quotes and they'll just keep throwing them at you. But then when you try to get beneath the surface, see, what makes us so wonderful as Catholics, that precious gift of our faith, is that we're not superficial. We're not just a handful of little quotes. We talk about a way of life. And we talk about a consistency in the way of life. And I have found over the years, and believe me, I have done a lot of study. I've got a master's in divinity, I've got a doctorate, I've got all of these different things, and still I pick up things and I read them and I have those aha moments. I read something like, maybe it was something from Bishop Barron or something that was in our diocesan newsletter, and I read it and I go, yeah, how did I miss that? How was I not thinking about that? Why didn't I ever notice that? That's what study is all about. That's all it is. It's just constantly exposing yourself to Catholic sources, constantly exposing your life to Catholic sources so that we can hear John the Baptist and try to do what he's saying. Make straight the path. Get your life in order. Well, so often there are so many things about our Catholic faith that we're rejecting or we're not understanding only because we've never really actually studied it. And so I say to anybody, on any topic in the Catholic faith that you disagree with, try to give the other side's argument. And if you can't, go look for some resources that'll help you to learn a little bit. Go look for those resources that will help you to appreciate more deeply the beauty and the richness of this precious gift that we all share, this precious gift of our faith. The weeks of Advent are a wonderful time for things like this because it's just like what St. Paul is saying. And St. Paul says it again and again. Like next week he's going to say rejoice. And next week we're going to get to talk about generosity. And those two go hand in hand. But like when we hear St. Paul speaking to our hearts, St. Paul is the one that's constantly encouraging the communities that he evangelized to grow and to keep growing and to keep growing and to keep praying, become a prayerful person, keep studying to understand more deeply the faith. And then not only that, giving that away. I love this time of year for a couple of things, and among them is that so many Catholics are once again piqued in their curiosity about the faith. They come to church, they look around, they hear the readings, they start to see things, they've been out trying to prepare and get ready for Christmas, and then when they come here, they're reassured and reaffirmed that they're on the right path. And I can see the joy that starts to build up over the 4 weeks of Advent. Very different from Lent in that regard, and yet still we're called to grow. And so these 4 weeks, I pray we're all growing a little bit, just taking those baby steps that Matthew Kelly talks about, just moving and advancing, if you will, in the faith, of not taking this precious gift that we've received and just putting it on a shelf and leaving it there, but actively embellishing it in our lives so that it becomes second nature to us, that we get excited about our faith, and so that when the day does come, we'll be able to share that faith. And so when we get involved in one of those conversations where relativism is ruling the conversation, we'll be able to hand them truth. We'll be able to hand them the beauty. We'll be able to hand them that depth and that substance that makes our faith so precious. And so I encourage all of you, keep following in the book. I know that you've all got copies last week. One copy per household. It's a very easy read. Matthew Kelly is probably one of the easiest authors to read that I've ever had. So I'm not giving you hard homework to do here. I don't want you to do that. Maybe start to look for some of those resources that are online or some of those resources that you can use. Go to Formed, and if you're not on Formed yet, get on Formed. It's got some great, great stuff. Maybe go watch Dr. Shree's series, Who Who am I to judge? He does such a phenomenal job in cutting right through the problem of relativism and how we can share the beauty of our Catholic faith with those who don't believe. But something's got to change. And in Advent, making straight the path, what St. John the Baptist is telling us is something's got to change. Let's make a change for the good. Let's make a change for the right. Let's start getting our focus back where it belongs, which is on our faith and on God, so that when we go out into this world that wants all of our music, they want our Christmas, but they don't want our faith. Isn't it funny how that's happening? And yet when we get into conversations with people, a lot of times, oh, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? So Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is I believe in Jesus Christ, and it's about his birth. And that takes first precedent, and that's the gift that I've received, that you've received, and that's the gift I hope you can give to the world. God bless you.